So hey everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Fight Chat Friday. This week, rather than looking at a competitive match, skills, tactics, strategies and the things that we usually look at, we're going to preempt our move to outdoor training. So for the first time in quite a while, we're allowed to train in groups of up to 15 outdoors, particularly with the kids in Ireland. And we're going to go through with you all of our thoughts and decisions about what the training content is going to look like, what we're going to prioritise, what we're going to focus on. So if you're in a similar situation, particularly if you're in Ireland, this is definitely going to be a video you'll have some interest in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a different type of version of the Fight Chat Friday. We don't have a fight, but we do have a chat. So we're going to talk about some outdoor training this week, especially as for people in Ireland at the minute, we are just transitioning into some outdoor stuff. Hopefully the weather stays relatively good. At the moment, it's not bad, so that will make a massive difference to us as well. I know there are some countries that are already been training for a long time outdoors, so if you do come from one of those countries and you have some experiences to share, definitely get involved in the chat in the comments. It would be good to hear people's experiences thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for us, this is kind of going back over some territory we've been in before, because we have been allowed outdoor training last year. And so we do have protocols kind of in place. They all need to be verified and checked before we go live next week. But we have some good ballpark, kind of knowledge and, what we can expect. And so we're going to kind of base our planning on that for now and tweak based on what we find a bit later. So like the premise for this one is that we were given a very, very simple kind of set of sentences that lead us to where we're at. So it's a case of, well, outdoor sport will be allowed in pods of up to 15. So that, for anyone who's not sure what the pods are about, that just basically means they're discrete groups that can't interact with each other. So if you're in a pod with 15 other people, those are the 15 people you train with, class in, class out. You're never with another group of people, and that's just to stop mixing between groups and to limit the spread of any potential COVID outbreak. So we have that possibility, and it's for underage. Now, what's a really interesting thing for us is that underage in every normal description of this is under the age of 18. What's weird with this one is when the definitions were done for this last year, underage was school-going children and included children who were 18 or people who were 18 years of age. So we don't have clarity on that one yet. So whether it's up to 18 or up to 17, we don't know. We just don't know yet. Yeah. So we're going to have to wait on that. But that's the detail that we're working with as of now. So it's not a lot of detail. Yeah.
And of course, it's a non-contact as well, isn't it? So, I know there are some people, for example, in Netherlands, there I see they're doing pad work and things like that. So, we won't be in that situation. It's completely non-contact. So, I think that will be a good base of today's discussion as well, what we can and can't do in terms of training topics and syllabus and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's there really is a kind of a little bit of time to see how this evolves when it comes to non-contact as well, because for every sport they define the non-contact a little differently. So we have to see how our specific protocols line up for that. So obviously the overall intent is to keep people socially distanced for the majority of the time during the training. It is necessary to come closer from time to time and all that, but that's look, we'll dig into that as we go. So it might be best to start this chat with the dry and boring part, as in the protocols, and just so that people who are watching from abroad, you may kind of zone out of this one for a few seconds and come back to us if you really have to. But for Ireland, it's really important that we understand what the framework that we're working in is, and so what we have to do to enable us. So you can't just decide, right, we're going outside. Great, we're done. Yeah. There are some things that, and maybe even just for the perspective, if you're watching this from abroad, to know what we're up against versus what you're up against. Maybe this will make you feel better, or maybe it make you feel worse. I don't know. So the first thing is that we're following guidelines set down by Sport Ireland, by the Martial Arts Commission, which is our governing body for martial arts in Ireland. And what it is for us is that that's where the protocols are set and approved, and the government guidelines are agreed. So we have to kind of follow these, and some of them are very simple. First thing we need to do is make sure that every class that someone is going to attend, they've reserved online. We can't have people who show up who show up on spec, because as you're going to see later on, they need to actually fill in a training questionnaire that basically says, look, they haven't experienced symptoms, they haven't been in close contact with somebody who's tested positive, they haven't been out of the country, those kind of things. So the first thing you're going to be doing is reserving a class online. The next thing that we have is that for arrival at the training session, if you're walking, you just plan to arrive at the start of the session. If you're driving there, you stay in the car until your class time, and they're discouraging carpooling still. When you're checking in, so if you need to go and physically meet with a coach to tick a box or whatever to say that you're there, depending on the software you use or the hardware that you use in terms of a clipboard and paper or whatever, you should be wearing a face covering for that part, and the coach will be as well. And then afterwards, when you're socially distanced, you don't need to. You're going to have a designated space for your pod, so it'll be up to coaches to divide out the spaces to keep the pod socially distanced and so on, and then to kind of have a system in place for how people move within those pods to try to, stick with the ethos of, preserving a little bit of distance and keeping people safe. So throughout it, the ideal is that we're staying socially distanced, but the realities of training mean that you will have movement in and out of this, but this is the idea that we're trying to stick to. Of course, we want people to train hard. That's just a given. There's no handshake policy, so the kind of things that you might forget about, of giving someone a hug, a high five, whatever. It's just a reminder to people that that's still not okay at this point in time. We're not quite there yet in Ireland. Equipment that's used needs to be cleaned down in between sessions, so that also links us to having gaps between the sessions for clearing people out and getting the new crew back in again. But if there's equipment like, whether it's balls, kick shields, hurdles, anything that might have been touched, coughed or sneezed on, anything like that, that it needs to be cleaned down in between the sessions. And then finally, at the end of the session, there's no chance for a nice group chat and a social session. It's unfortunately still very antisocial and making way at the end of the session. So as you said, Richie, that's the dry and boring part kind of ticked, so that we can kind of proceed with more of a discussion about the good side of this, of like finally we get to actually meet each other and train in person again. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's massive, because it's been almost, 4 months leading into 5 months almost since we did get a group together and train people face to face. People have been working online. It doesn't suit everybody. Some people don't really enjoy the online as much as others, and some people are just kind of holding out to get back into normal training. So this is a step forward in the right direction, which is good. Of course, it does have some challenges as well, of course, particularly for us. We live in a country where our climate isn't so trustworthy, so we could be here in the middle of May and be drenched in rain, so that's not ideal when you're outdoor. We do need to take those considerations in. So then we're looking at like the surface and things like that, the footwear that you wear, dobok versus tracksuit. All these considerations have to come into place when you're thinking about outdoor. You've got logistical problems that you don't have inside. Then you got to look at things like people, for example, from my own personal club, we're going to be in an outdoor facility, which is an all-weather soccer pitch, is what it's designed for, football pitch. So then you might have the problem of footballs coming in over and things like that, which would be a problem. I don't think that will be a problem at the beginning, because it's just juvenile people that can do some training. So you won't have people coming down to play football and stuff. I don't think it's more structured at the minute. So that might be a problem in the future. But of course, you've potential distractions like people watching from afar and things like that. You have parents who can watch from far because it's outdoors, so they can keep distance and stay well outside the defined area and still kind of be there as such, which all have potential distractions. So there are some challenges as well, of course, but we have massive opportunity with this as well, Adrian, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, you've kind of jumped into the first thing that we need to do as coaches, which is plan to make the best possible use of this opportunity. And like yourself, we'll be using an outdoor AstroTurf. It's not designed for soccer, so it'll be the shorter grass. But the thing that jumps to mind, first of all, is not only in Ireland do you have the potential to have a downpour in May, but you have the potential within the same hour to be sunburned and soaked. So we could have potentially 16, 17 degrees, bright sun and pale skin, and lack of hair and getting burnt, and then absolutely doused in rain. And like I had that years ago when I was working with hockey. where I turned up to a course and was soaked through, had to go change clothes 3 times, and went home with a bright red head and completely sunburnt. And that's just a normal day in Ireland if you're not prepared for the weather. So the first thing that I'll definitely be advising is that people dress in layers for the weather. So having a tracksuit bottoms, a t-shirt, a zip up top, or something that they can take off as they get warmer, or as it cools. Even just.
Are you thinking Dobok or non-Dobok, Adrian, for your own club?
I don't think we'll have anyone in Dobok. It's just they're not suited to any of the weather conditions that we have in Ireland, to be quite honest. Because if it's windy, they give you nothing. If it's raining, they give you nothing except going see-through. And I just don't think it's suitable for our weather. Yeah, not for our weather. So that's something that we'll have to just look at. I mean, if the weather was like it is outside there now, you could say, well, yeah, put on leggings under or tights under or something like that, and you'll be grand. But the second it rains, that Dobok is nasty. It's not good. So I think we're going to avoid the Dobok.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's a good opportunity as well to be able to train and maybe get a bit of marketing going for your club. I know a lot of schools have been not able to kind of get new members in for a long time. So it is a good opportunity to get the club tracksuits out and get a bit of branding going as well.
Yeah.
So I will be encouraging that in my own club. Hopefully that we can wear our club tracksuit. So that will be a good opportunity for that.
For sure, that'll definitely be something that we can look at. And then, as you said, look, there's the logistics of it. I mean, we're used to training in halls where, maybe we have storage facilities and all the rest of it. So now everything that we need at the training session has to be hauled from place to place. So that's going to be a different thing for us, and cleaned up, set up beforehand, cleaned up afterwards. And then, like what I found when we were training indoors, even in different levels of protocols, was the cleaning up afterwards is a point where the protocols can break down if you're not careful. So it's just one of those things that you do have to be conscious of. And of course, everyone can see. You're outside. So if you're not doing it right, you'll have a report, and you'll have the guards calling down to you, before you know it. That's
so true. That you need to have. They have the accountability there is almost in it already. So it's kind of, when you do have your coaches, if you have the luxury of having a couple of assistant coaches there as well, it's having defined tasks for those people, and everybody's on the same page of what needs to be done, and everybody has a set job almost of being something that they're responsible to adhere to.
Yeah, and we have a question popped in there from Mike Flynn, who's one of the Irish guys here. So outdoor training will need adult instructors, 100% true, and that's provided for under the statutory instrument as a necessary person. So can adult black belts train with senior instructors as assistant instructors? And then that's where that breaks down. No. I mean, I love the lateral thinking, Mike. Much appreciated. But the the difficulty that we have basically is that the training that's permitted, the group training that's permitted, is for underage. Okay, that's where it's limited, and they are allowed to train with necessary persons. So whether that's a parent for safeguarding purposes being present, an instructor from a qualified instructor from an NGB for training purposes, those kind of things are covered, and the details in the statutory instruments. But for right now, no, we can't do that. But we do have a segment later in this show where we will be talking about how your seniors and your black belts and the rest of it can train, and what they can do under the circumstances to both get themselves active and involved within the club, and as instructors, how to get those people active with the club, and how they can prepare as if this is pre-season and get ready for when things open up again a bit further, hopefully in a few weeks' time. So the things that jump into my mind is that I need to pack different things into the car than I normally would. And the things that are jumping to my mind for every session are, I need like cones or rigidity spots to mark out spaces and, activities and tasks. So that's the first thing that's jumping to my mind. And then anything along the lines of outdoor agility gear, like the ladders, the hurdles, the steps, any of the plyo gear, that's the kind of things that's jumping to my mind of like, I need to start. If I don't have it, I need to invest in it for a while. And if I do have it, I need to pack it.
Yeah, it's going to be like a bit different, because usually you have your kick shields and pads and stuff that you bring. So it's going to be a little bit of a change there, because realistically we can't use any of that stuff. So it's going to be, we'll get into how we can train later on, but it's going to be a lot of almost isolation stuff because we can't have any contact. So we will be looking a lot towards the physical kind of stuff, like you said, Adrian, with like agility ladders and things like that, as well as a lot of line work, which is something that traditionally, it's fair to say that myself and yourself wouldn't be doing as a massive part. We try to keep our sessions very interactive. So we will chat about a way that we can kind of overcome that with station coaching and station training as well, which may be a way to kind of keep the engagement up. Of course, sessions will be shorter as well compared to what you usually probably would have an hour. So sessions will probably need to be a little bit shorter. Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the necessity for the changeovers, I mean, most places that are renting outdoor facilities are doing it by the hour. And then you're going to have the difficulty then of saying, okay, well, if we have it for an hour, we need to set up, tear down, and we need to change over it, and we don't want the groups to interact. So I think you're going to be looking at 45, max 50-minute sessions initially, unless you're like renting 3 hours or 4 hours and running over. But another difficulty for us is that we don't have access to facilities. There's no clubhouses, there's no toilets, there's no nothing allowed at this stage. So it really is a challenge for us poor instructors. I hope you've got good bladder control, but like you're going to be out there for as long as the sessions are. Like, people have to arrive ready to train and leave. There's no touch points, as they're called. So that's something that's different for us as well. But thinking about who we're going to be training, I mean, we have the underage, but we can break that down a little bit. I've got a kind of a different focus in mind, depending on which group we're talking about. So for the younger ones, whether it's under 6, 8, 10, 12 even, you know, I think my focus initially is going to be quite different versus the higher up groups. And but there is still some things for me that are like common to all of the groups that I've been thinking about and planning, that as well as the short sessions, like, and marking out the zones for the pods, it's like, okay, what kind of warm-ups are we going to run? How are we going to set up stations? How are we going to arrange for them to pay attention and listen, and you know, and all of that kind of thing. So have you thought about some of that stuff?
Yeah, so it's going to be, first of all, we had to change things up going to Zoom, so you can't do everything that you can do when you're online, and then we're going to have to revert back a little bit as well and get a bit of a hybrid going here for the outdoor. So of course there's going to be a lot of things that will have to change. Like, you can't really have your general warm-up activities that you might have where there's interaction and you try to get that social group interacting together and you get the smiles going on people's faces. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge in its own right as well. So what I'm going to be looking at for the younger guys is really kind of getting them back into like the etiquette and things like that, how to train in Taekwondo, following a little bit of guidelines in terms of the discipline. Very important for the young guys. It's going to be new to them, of course, being outdoors, haven't been kind of in a big group for a long time, of course, being out of school for a long time as well. So just trying to get that structure back will be important for the younger guys. And then as well, just trying to really hone in on their fundamental movement skills a lot of the time. So their agility, their balance, their coordination, things like that is going to be very, very important for the youngest group, I think, because there has been a lot of time where kids have kind of missed out on a lot of physical activity, not only in school, and I know some schools are still not doing their PE, physical education, in school. So it will be an important time for a lot of young children to kind of get that in as well. So that will be a big focus for my youngest guys, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for the warm-up side of things, younger, older, etc., I see myself definitely doing a lot more of the ABCs, kind of the fundamentals of movement and the fundamental movement skills, just kind of like with an overall focus, particularly with those youngest ones, on physical literacy, on just moving well, generally building their movement capacity and their confidence in movement and their sporting skills, and being a bit more general in the sporting skills that we do as well. And, you know, mainly with that focus of getting them enjoying being in that group again. And there are a lot of activities that you can do that almost make them feel like you are in a group, even though, like, we can't do tag per se, but we can still have, we can still have races. We can still have, and all of the variations on those, you know, in terms of the style of movement that you use. So whether it's hopping, striding, jumping, even rolling, different things that you can do in your races. We can still use implements, so it can be, move your pile from there to there, so everyone has 4 pads, 4 balls, for whatever, and it's a race to it's basically a solo relay. So it's you go there, you come back at the next thing, go there, come back at the next thing, there, come back, that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to be.
Brings me back, Adrian. Sorry, just on that point, it brings me back to when I was doing teacher training for Hibernia. It was like the PE coaching was all that stuff. It was like you line up and it's like you run to the end, you come back, you do this, and you just do it different ways. So a lot of the coaching and training in primary school education was based around that. So it will be interesting to see how similar it will be.
But I think one of the reasons for that for me as well is it's the watching and listening and that kind of thing. And like I remind myself, I'm going to have to buy a whistle, because normally within a confined space, your voice holds up pretty well and travels well. But depending, like if you showed me the picture where you're going to be, if you have 3 other groups working within that pitch, there's nowhere to reflect the sound back. That's where the whistle is good. But then adopting a listening posture, what's the expectations around behavior when you're listening? How do you demonstrate, all those kind of things, and that maintaining of the social distance while you do it. I think all of that's going to be important. And so something like that initially, even if it's only for the first couple of weeks, where we do stuff in lines or, with solo activities, won't be too bad. At least we can re-establish like that group control. It'll be easier to manage all of that side of things, and we are still tackling in a fun way a lot of those physical fundamentals. And I think that for me is going to be a big important thing. So like in my head, I was starting to look at each of the groups and divide it down. I was like, okay, what can we work on and what should we work on across, whether it's the technical and tactical or on the the physical, the social, the cognitive, emotional, those kind of things. Like we're working on people in an all-round way, but we've been limited in what we could do over Zoom. And now is an opportunity to tackle a different aspect with each of the groups. So with this group, haven't really had a technical challenge, because for a lot of the youngest ones, they're just doing fundamental movements on the spot, kicking more or less on the spot. That's the kind of thing that they've been doing over Zoom, with a few little sparring bits and games. Whereas as we get up into the yellow belts, green belts, and the older ages, like what we've really struggled with over Zoom is getting patterns done. Anything that requires a bit of distance to move, like a jumping technique, that's been really hard because you're in a living room or in a hallway and whatever. So for us, I think that's going to be a big focus, up the ages and up the grades a little bit. But at this stage, I like that progression towards physical literacy of like fundamental movement skills, or the fundamentals of movement, the fundamental movement skills, moving into the game skills. So for us, we can't move into our sparring, so well. We can do some shadowing, some mirroring and stuff like that, but we can't move into the sparring so well. But we could look at the principles of other game skills and tactics. So we can have, some of the principles of like net games, invasion games. So we could have, dodgeball, we could have murder, we could have, and by the way, murder doesn't involve killing people. It's a ball, it's a ball game, but or frisbee. But there are games that we could do that. Once you have that spatial awareness, it's about maintaining space from other people and avoiding the object, and all that stuff. We can teach some principles of game skills to build movement and peripheral vision and awareness of space and all that kind of thing, and rhythm and so forth. And I think that's got to be the focus for the first few weeks with that age group.
Yeah, it's going to be building back up excitement as well, isn't it? And of course, you do have the potential now. People are kind of, restrictions are easing a little bit, so people are very keen to get outside, especially as the weather is getting a little bit better in the northern hemisphere. So we will be looking at people kind of around parks and things like that as well. So it is like you will have some eyes on the session, so it's a good opportunity as well. Although it's a challenge for instructors, of course we want to keep our sessions as engaging as possible and as exciting as possible, but you do have potential people who may want to join as well, so you do have that there of being a visual of fun. Let's keep it exciting and fun. Exactly. So if your sessions are just very much traditional and very much line work, that's all you're doing and things like that, for kids, that's not going to be very exciting, and you probably will lose that opportunity that you may have of attracting new people as things open up a little bit further.
Yeah, and that's one of the things of if you have a fairly proficient class at green and blue belt or something like that, the fundamentals and some patterns done, in lockstep as such, could actually be visually quite impressive. I mean, maybe not in pods of 15, but when you're thinking of that, like, you know, a big field full of like people training and all moving in synchronicity, that's pretty impressive regardless. Even if you're not sure about the activity they're doing, it's still a visually impressive thing. But what we want is that feeling that you get when you look at a yard in PE, where you've got a bunch of kids who are all really excited and happy to be doing, you know, doing what they're doing there. That's our best advertisement, regardless of what the activity is. But like, I think then when you step up, like what I'm really excited about of my intermediate and moving up, like that kind of group is, like, we haven't been able to do explosive work. We haven't been able to do plyos. We haven't been able to do agility work over Zoom. Like, none of that. No footwork stuff for sparring. Like we've been able to do very little of it, just because of the lag between, you know, us trying to show you something and you trying to mirror it, or giving commands or audible stuff. Like, it's really hard to do, just because space on their end, it's mirrored, which is tricky. So me going to my right is tricky for people. That's my right. You know, that's tricky for people who are seeing me pointing over to the left on the screen, or whatever it happens to be. And then if I'm saying left and I do this, or I'm saying right and going, you know, it gets it very, very confusing. So being in person and just being able to move or shadow a person is going to be good. Having the space to move, being able to sprint, being able to have big changes of direction, jumping and special technique. I mean, like, we may have to improvise from apparatus initially before we can get people holding paddles, but that's something that I'm looking forward to as well. Even just flying sidekick to start with, that you can just start stacking up pads. You know, simple thing, but like, we're jumping, and it brings out that friendly competition and the buzz. Like, that's really what I'm after with these.
Yeah, definitely. And you actually, we had a chat before this as well, and you brought up the idea of team pattern. I think that's going to be great. And the kids absolutely love that. And it's a good way to get the technical back up and get people back involved in pattern. And one of the best things about that as well is, for some people who may not be partaking in the online stuff, and they may have not done a pattern for weeks and weeks and weeks, there's an opportunity there to mirror some of your fellow athletes or whatever, to do that and just upskill a little bit in terms of the pattern. And of course, the kids absolutely love it. Great fun. And that will be something that I will definitely be having in my sessions.
For sure. And again, the other thing that's been hard in terms of the online training is, like, a lot of the physical stuff that you do throughout the course of a normal session, you know, all of the basic body weight exercises and all that kind of thing, we've been doing, but not really being able to monitor it. And it's not the same when you're doing it by yourself. Like, the difference of, say, trying to bang out 10 push-ups, but like, I'm here and you're there, and we vanish off the camera for 15 seconds and we come back up again. It's like, you done? Yeah, whatever. Like, who did what? Who knows? Were they quality? Were they not? Whereas, you know, if we can look 2 meters away to each person and we're doing them synchro, or it's like, okay, here's the circuit, we go until we're finished, and whoever's done first, and the coach is picking people out on, like, no, all the way chest to the floor, whatever it is, like, it makes it a bit more engaging. And like, I'm looking forward to having that part of it back as well. Like, just the, you know, the challenge and the motivation of seeing someone else struggling like you are, and you trying to outlast them or outperform them. I think that's just like, it, you know, it's 100% sport that's needed. Like,
yeah, that will be good. And like, as well, that's one of the things I always try to have in my sessions, because if somebody is there and they're trying to do more than you in a certain amount of time or whatever, it pushes people on, pushes the whole group on, and it just builds that competitive spirit in people as well. And the kids love it, so they're going to be excited to get back outdoors and to be kind of competing with people in an environment like that. So we do have plenty of opportunities and lots of things that we can do, which is good news. So we do have a lot of opportunity to upskill in things that we've been missing over the last while. I think it's a good chance as well to get plenty of kicking work in. So to get, like, with your dynamic work, a little bit of leg strength, things like that, it will be a good opportunity to get that back in. Because with Zoom, it just, some people just don't have the luxury of being able to have the space to kick well and to kick comfortably, as well as, just like you said, just trying to show people the smaller details, especially people who are at that maybe yellow belt stage or whatever, just to get in the principles of kicking correctly, like lift and shift and some things like that will be important as well, because we kind of weren't able to do them as effectively as we would like to for a long time. So it's just kind of building that pathway again and the skill acquisition, hopefully leading into indoor sessions where we can get a bit more contact and a bit more realistic training and a bit more representative.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you said it jumped to mind. Like even kicking off a wall, where we're carrying the leg, and we're stressing
Yeah.
this the whole time in terms of our sparring. But a lot of people just don't have room in the space that they've been training in to actually carry from maybe more than one or two hops. So trying
Yeah.
to be explosive indoors has been nigh on impossible. And then the other simple thing of like a lot of people are training on laminate wood floors or concrete floors or tile floors or what they're not good surfaces for people to do some of the types of training in, and so they're cautious with themselves. They don't go explosively because they'll probably fall, or they're worried that they'll fall. So I'm looking forward to the development that happens when people can be a bit more free. So what about the likes of us, the seniors, the ones who are not covered under this, as athletes or as individuals who can train? Where are we at, and what are we going to advise for people in our position?
Well, from my own personal perspective, I'm quite fortunate in a way. My club is quite a young club, so we didn't start any adult beginner clubs. My initial thoughts were to build up into adults. So I started with beginner kids classes only, and we're building them up. So the oldest I have is actually 18. So for us, I think most of us will be able to train everybody in the club. So that will be good news. In terms of everybody else, then I think you still have an opportunity here to get outside. Some people have siblings they can train with. They
Yeah,
like people. I do see people are doing off the record sessions as well. So like people are going to start doing more and more of
of
them as
course they
well,
are.
adults, because they want to interact, and people have their own little pods of people that they're interacting in a social group. So you will see that as well. It won't be something that will be structured by any clubs or almost endorsed by us, but it will be happening, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I mean, from our point of view, like again, it certainly can't go on record and say to people, look, what you want to do
Yeah.
really is find a nice room with a locked door, and no. So the principle is very, very simple. You're allowed to meet with a person from another household outdoors for physical activity. So what we've got now, which we didn't have before, is the ability for, say, two people to meet up and go for a run, which has not been there for a little while. Now it's been happening, don't get me wrong, but that's
Yeah.
one that's kind of just being relaxed there recently, and so now motivationally, like I would never going to go out that door and go for a run, but if Stephen or Jamie or someone picks up the phone and says, listen, I'm going to go for a run at 12, do you want to come along? I'll have to think about it, because it's just a case of, well, for the chat, like
Yeah.
you'll run for the chat, but you can also, like, there's nothing stopping you meeting up and going through some pattern, or doing a physical workout, in particular body weight, if you've your own personal gym equipment, as in even kettlebell or something like that, all of a sudden this stuff becomes usable and doable outdoors, any public area. You're good to go, as long as it's not in your back garden, bizarrely. But sometimes the regulations, you read them and they make no sense, but
Yeah.
but what we can do is say to people is, look, you have to kind of treat this as if it's your pre-season. So your job is to do something about your cardiovascular base. So you want to build up your aerobic endurance and your aerobic capacity to some degree, whether that's long, slow, steady state, whether it's like your fast walk, your go for a jog, your go for a swim, get on your bike, do any of those things outdoors. Go to intervals, go for a bit of interval training, fartlek running, anything along those lines. Good to do. You can do it right now. That's it's great, and it's a whole lot more doable with somebody else. The motivation improves a whole lot. And then from a basic strength point of view, it's like, okay, you don't have access to the gym yet, you don't necessarily have your own gym equipment at home, but you might have something, as I said, like a kettlebell, like you can always pop down to the hardware store and buy a sandbag. Like, I mean, genuinely, if you've only got, if finance is a limitation, if anything like that, put 10 or 15 kilos of sand in a bag, you're good to go. If you're feeling good, bring it up to 20, 30, 40 kilos, but I guarantee it.
Or even a backpack with a rake of books or something like that.
Do you know what? Honestly, yeah, and but it's just when you're thinking of like, I can't remember, or don't know what you'd actually call them, the burlaps, a potato sack, basically, with 20 kilos of sand between. Throw that over your shoulders like a Bulgarian bag. Do your squats, do your lunges, take it for a walk up a hill. Front loaded squats and carries, all that kind of stuff. like you'll find yourself developing an awful lot of resilience very, very quickly, and it's going to add load to everything that you do. Super accessible, and you don't want to necessarily spend and buy yourself your own weight training kit if you haven't already, like as in a barbell and plates and all the rest of it. Like if you haven't done that already, I'd say you don't want to do that now, and potentially you could be back in the gym in 3 weeks. But optimistically, but it's something that you might just like. It becomes a totally different thing if you can train outdoors with somebody else, and then all of a sudden those odd objects, a bit of a log, a nice a stone you found handy, all those things can be adapted for your training, just between like that loaded carries, front loaded squats, put it across your shoulders, go for a walk, take it a few lunges, will do wonders for just priming the engine for when we get back going again, so you're not in that position. Like everyone has been in a club and seen the guy who's been saying, yeah, I'll be back now next week for 2 or 3 years, and then eventually he comes back or she comes back, and those first few sessions are make or break. It's like you got to kind of just, you're not who you once were, you're not there anymore, you've got to build your way back up to that. And I think that's where people have to be conscious now of, well, what do we do to get ourselves into the ready state for training.
Yeah, and it's going to be important as well to have that. Like you can easily train outdoors with somebody, just another person, and be completely socially distanced. You stay on like even 5 meters apart, you'll have plenty of space. But that accountability will be very, very important, especially if you're going to have the consistency to keep it going. So that's going to be vital that you kind of have a little bit of an accountability in a buddy system or whatever you have, because you'll notice that your motivation, if you do this on your own, will dwindle quite quickly, especially if there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So it's good to have a little bit of a structure there and to get a little bit of accountability off somebody who train with, a family member or whatever, pull somebody out of the house that you live in, get them involved, get them training, and you can easily just pick up some equipment, like you said, Adrian, and get going that way.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You just got to keep it simple at this stage. And I think for me anyway, the motivation is looking at this as if, look, this is just step one. Like this is stage one. We've been here before, and hopefully we won't be here again. Like this is just hopefully the beginning of that on-ramp into like something like normal training. But we've got to look at the opportunities that being outdoors and being in a group provides us. And it's like, for me, it's on that like social and emotional side of things as well, where we're going to start feeling better once we start meeting with our regular groups of friends and doing some training. We're going to start feeling better about everything and being more productive towards everything. We're going to believe in that, like, look, there's a future here, and there's good stuff coming down the line. And then just the social thing of making your training repeatable, because we're going to head out, we're going to have a chat, we're going to meet the lads, we're going to do something. That's great. And I mean, even from the point of view of like, I wouldn't be quite like yourself. Like there are a number of adults training within the club. Most of them have trained from younger, but we've got a lot of parents as well, that kind of thing, or a group of parents who train. And like for them, they're jumping at the bit, they want to get going again. And it's very, very hard. So we're looking at ways to not to kind of go the whole way with Mike's idea, but to use these people in a volunteer coach capacity to get them back and integrated. And and especially because now what we're looking at is we've pods of 15. We're not going to run one pod of 15 at a time the whole way through. Safeguarding is still a thing, child protection is still a thing, GDPR is still a thing. All of these things have to still be managed. So what we're looking at is, well, maybe can I run one pod, can Jamie run another pod, can we get the likes of Ben and Jess and Owen and Mark and Julio and all these guys, like, can we get them to basically shadow and assist? And even if their only job is to stay apart there, lads, a little bit, move on there, don't stop, it could be the simple stuff. But just 1 hour a week, just come out, help out, be with the people in the club, have the chats. It's a way to kind of break the ice on getting forward for the next session, or the next section of this release when they get to train. Like, because
that's important for people mentally, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to come. It's just a case of like, look, the kids are all back in school together, and at the moment cases are staying stable. Whether that's linked to any of the measures in place or not, who knows? But that's the thing. So right now the kids are allowed to come back into outdoor sport to some degree, and it's mostly on a mental health grounds, to be honest, like from the narrative that's out there. But let's utilize that and build on it and try to integrate some of the senior members of the clubs as well and get them at training sessions, even if they can't train yet.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. It's going to be very important to get people back and get people going. And like as you said, it just is step one on the path. So hopefully it lasts. Hopefully the vaccine problem gets solved quickly. I know there's a bit of hassle with that there now. We get back on the road to getting back to tournaments, getting back to what we love doing. So hopefully it's not too far off in the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking forward to it. That's but I'm kind of, maybe I'm a sucker for it, but the once you have that ray of light that something's opening, something's happening, it's like, all right, and all the momentum builds and the excitement builds, and let's go for this. And I really am just looking at it as, okay, how do we make the very, very most out of this situation and get going? And that's kind of, that's where I'm sitting at with that one for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at really with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that the biggest takeaways are to get involved, get going some way or somehow, no matter whether you're juvenile, underage, or whether you're an adult. Just get back involved, take the first step, and then everything should get the ball rolling and get you going in the right path. So I hope we've given some people some suggestions of what they can do outdoors. Hopefully, because it's not easy for people who are used to it. Especially, there might be some people who are new to instructing and coaching, and some people who may have to almost structure their own sessions right now. So hopefully, there's some valuable takeaways there for people. If you've got questions, always drop them in. Let us know. Sure. If not, we have our last live session on Tuesday coming. So that's because of us getting back to outdoor training, obviously. So make sure you check that out. We will probably have a Q&A, help people with some practical Q&A and cover some topics as well as best we can in that session. So keep an eye on our social media for that over the weekend, and we will let people know.
Super. All right. Well, we'll see you then on Tuesday. Bye, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.